Sangam ime hisaka rehi atarahang aropite hiapi pujayama sadhuno bante bhagava suchira parinibotopi Patima janata nukampamanasa ime sakare dugata panakala brute patikan hatu amhaka dikharatang Hitaya Sukhaya Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddha Bhagavantang Abhivademi Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Sama Sambuddho Vijja Charana Sampanno Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purissatammasarati Satade Vamanusanang Buddho Bhagava Tamahang Bhagavantang Abhipujayami Tamahang Bhagavantang Sirasa Namami Suwakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanayiko Pachatang Veditapo Vinyuhi Tamahang Dhammang Abhipujayami Tamahang Dhammang Sirasa Namami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Uchupatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Yaya Patipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Samichi Patipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Yaditang Chatari Purisayugani Ata Purisa Pugala Tesa Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anuttarang Punya Ketang Lokasa Tamahang Sangang Abhipujayami Tamahang Sangang Sirasa Namami. Right. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be happy. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be happy. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, freed from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to false views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is Thank you. Oh dear. They're getting more. Anyway. Thanks, more. So here we go. Question number 1. Dear Ajahn, when meditators you interviewed had nimittas in each jhana state said, I really let go, did they tell you what motivated them to meditate? No, sometimes people meditate for all sorts of different reasons. Sometimes there was one person who meditated here. He came to the interview, said, no, how are you? He said, well, I didn't really want to come here. My wife sent me here. And that's the only reason he came. His wife sent him here. Fair enough. Some people start meditating for all sorts of different reasons, but the point is, oh yeah, okay, someone was doing this to me, I thought they could say it to me. Yeah, okay, fair enough. That's Ajahn Brahm unplug. Okay, yeah. So they come here for all sorts of different reasons to meditate. Sometimes because they're stressed out at work. Sometimes it's because, what do they do? They've got sicknesses. Great for just doing things like healing sicknesses like cancers and stuff. And what was that great story? Many of the people who have been here before know this one. That there was this Cockney fellow called George. And, quite old because, he was talking that so when he was a small kid, he was during the Second World War and in London. And anyway, that poor old George, in those days, people would smoke cigarettes. They didn't know what else to do. They didn't know it was going to kill you. But old George, he was smoking a lot, and of course he got lung cancer. And he told me the story that he went to his doctor over in Armadale somewhere, and the doctor showed him the x-rays. Both lungs totally covered with tumours or whatever it is. And he said, normally we do an operation to cut the disease part out, but it's all over you. If we cut everything out, there'd be nothing left. And he told poor old George, well, we can give you chemotherapy, radiation therapy, maybe 1 month, 2 months extra life, if you want. And he said, well, what's the point? And he said, well, don't just go home, talk it over with your wife and family, first of all. That's what he did. 1 week later, he went back again, and the doctor insisted on doing another x-ray to see how it progressed in 1 week. And he was apparently, I remember George telling me this, that he went into the specialist room, and the doctor was looking at the new x-ray, shaking his head. And poor old George, people are so negative these days, they always think the worst. And he asked his specialist, okay, just tell me, how many days have I got left? And that's when the doctor put up his head and said, George, the reason I'm shaking my head is not because it's got worse. The reason I'm shaking my head is because it's totally disappeared. What the heck have you been doing, George? And know what George said? Meditating. Carry on. That's good old George. That's what happened to him. So deadly cancer just disappeared in a few days. So anyway, one of my best stories of, actually I wasn't doing any meditation, but it's on top of my head, so here we go. This was a fellow called Ted. And I went to see him when he was dying, and he was in the hospice, in the Jhana hospice. He was one of the first patients in there. And because he was one of the first patients and I went to go and visit him, I was invited, they had the patients in there first, they had the grand opening ceremony a couple of weeks later. So they invited me to the opening ceremony, and one of the sponsors of that hospice was the founder of the Dome coffee shops. And there was only 1 or 2 of them in those days, the Dome. And he was a really tall fellow, apparently he was an ex-Olympic athlete. And he was really tall, and he had no hair on top. So I couldn't help but ask him, is that why you called it Dome Coffee? I really get into trouble sometimes. Or here we go, another story. That, because I'm well connected, and there's one time I was invited over to when Queen Elizabeth came for the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne a few years ago. And part of that, there was an invitation to it was a reception at Kirribilli House with Howard when he was Prime Minister. And I got this card here in Bodhinyana Monastery, an invitation for Ajahn Brahm and his partner. So no way I could take anyway all the way from Perth to Sydney. But I knew a friend in Sydney, Ajahn Sujato. So I invited him to go along. So there's this story, just the sort of stuff which Ajahn Brahm gets up to. So we went into Kirribilli House and there he said hello to the Queen and stuff like that. But most of the royal family was there. So this was his name, Prince Phil. No, so Prince Philip, yeah. And there's a couple of others there, but also Prince Edward was there. And so everybody was just wanting to talk to the Queen and Prince Philip and stuff. So I saw Prince Edward there, no one was talking to him. So I grabbed Ajahn Sujato, and we just said hello, and I said, because have you ever seen Prince Edward? He really is losing his hair at the top. So Ajahn Brahm, being naughty, said, if you lose any more hair, you can become a monk like me and my friend. And then Ajahn Sujato, and then he said, who was that? I said, don't you know, that was Prince Edward. Ajahn Brahm, you can't say such things to Prince Edward. Of course you can. I got away with it. Anyway, what am I doing? Oh, yeah. So what motivates people to meditate? All sorts of things, where you start. But then, as you get into it more and more, you find there's more and more sort of like resources there. You find more and more like jewels in the mind. And you can get some amazing stuff for your meditation. And quite frankly, there's sometimes that if I'm very tired and I've got to perform, give a talk somewhere, so you've been traveling, for 24 hours overseas somewhere, and you've got to give a talk almost as soon as you land. Bah! And what I usually do, and it works every time, sit down there and meditate properly. Because after meditating, it's a big boost of energy. And, you can actually do stuff. Or other times is, for your own health. I remember just this first time I went to Canberra. And, I wasn't well known then. And so I was taken all over the place. And people got lost. And it took a long time to get me back. I was supposed to just go out for lunch and then go a tour around, then come back and have a bit of a rest and a cup of tea before giving a talk that evening. But I was lucky to make the talk on time. About 10 minutes before the talk was supposed to start, we arrived at the venue, and I couldn't have any shower, not even a cup of tea. You know what it's like for Ajahn Brahm without his cup of tea. That was really tough. And by that time, I'd got a cold. I was sniffling. Now, real cold, because Canberra could be extremely freezing. And I wasn't used to it. I thought, like many sort of people visiting Australia for the first time, we always think that Australia's hot all over, all the time. There's some very, very cold parts of Australia. So it was the first time in Canberra, really chilly, and I started having a cold. And as I gave the talk, I said, the Buddha, and this stuff was coming out of my eyes and my nose, and it was disgusting. But I tried my very best. And after about, you can see, when I give a talk, you can notice I always scan around when I give talks to see whether you're paying attention or not. It's not your fault, it's my fault if I don't sort of make it interesting. And so people were looking at their watches, looking at the ground, scratching this or whatever, and I realised I was losing them very quickly. So after about 10 or 15 minutes, and obviously I couldn't string a sentence or a paragraph together without sneezing and coughing. So I said, okay, let's meditate now. Because it's supposed to be half an hour meditation in the program, but I said, let's do it now. And everyone was quite happy to do that. It wasn't a guided meditation because I knew I had to really be quiet and get into it. And after half an hour meditation, and I gave a talk without a cough, without a sneeze, it all stopped. That's amazing. Sometimes I'm surprised just what you can do with your meditation. And I asked some of the people afterwards, I got to know them very, very well. And they said, how do you like the talk? I said, well, the talk was amazing, but what was really incredible was what happened to your cold. It just went. It's amazing what you can do with meditation. So that's another thing you can do. If you have to do a lot of jobs and something, just ask half an hour, sit down. You have to do it properly, just really let go. Allow the body to heal itself. It's amazing. So why do people meditate? For all sorts of reasons. And sometimes it's amazing what you can do, what happens. Dear Ajahn Brahm, what is the 4 pairs, 8 kinds of noble beings in our chant? Well, we got myself and Venerable Wasi there, that's 1 pair. Now, that is the 4 types of beings, the stream winner, the once returner, the non-returner, and the enlightened being. Those are the 4. And that to understand what it is, the stages of enlightenment. And the best simile for that is the shipwrecked sailor simile from the Buddha. There's sailors are in the ocean. And one of them, I'll just make it short, one of them is floating on the surface, in the middle of the ocean, and looks around and can see dry land in the distance. They can see safety. That's called a stream winner. They can see where they need to go, what's safety. And then the once returner, they're swimming towards the dry land. That's the once returner. The non-returner is so close to dry land, they don't need to swim anymore. They can just stand up. They can feel solid ground under their feet. They can wade to the shore. And the enlightened one, they're in the shore, they're safe. They're sitting under a coconut tree having a cup of tea with condensed milk. Or something similar, whatever people like. So that's the 4th, the enlightened one. They're safe. And that's a nice little simile which the Buddha gave. So that's the 4 types of people. The 4 pairs, the 8 types, is those on the way to being a stream winner and those who have actually got to be a stream winner. Those on the way to being once returner, those who've got to being a once returner. Those on the way practicing towards becoming a non-returner, and those who are a non-returner. Those on the way to being an enlightened person, and those who actually got there. So they call it the path and the fruit. However, it's very clear the path to being a stream winner and becoming a stream winner. Becoming a stream winner is an event. You can't just say, oh yeah, I think I'm a stream winner now. It's a huge event in your life which you can't miss. And, okay, I sometimes think, should I say this, should I not say this? Because sometimes people have these old claims. They said, I'm a stream winner, I'm this, I'm that. But if you're a monk or a nun and you claim any of these states, if you're making it up, you have to disrobe. You can't stay as a monk. It's quite a fierce rule, but the Buddha was very strict on this. Don't make these claims to other people. It's maybe between you and your teacher. But because of that, in the monk's Vinaya, which is the same for the nun's Vinaya, if somebody comes along and says they were made a stream winning, there's all these questions which we're supposed to ask them. So, I have to interrogate them. And that's what I asked them. I said, when and where? What happened? So, these are important things, because they didn't want everybody coming along and saying they're all enlightened. Otherwise, it can be very, very disturbing for people. You follow some sort of teacher and they say they're enlightened and they get up to all sorts of mischief afterwards. You lose your faith. So that's why in monasticism, if somebody says they're enlightened and we have to check it up, then, and if they pass, isn't it? It's much more likely that it's true. So those are the 4 pairs and the 8 kinds of noble beings in your chant. Do you want to be enlightened? There was once. This is a great story. This is not from Theravada Buddhism, this is from Chinese Buddhism. There was this young monk, and he'd done his basic training, and then he asked the abbot of the monastery, he said, not far from here, it's a very busy monastery, doing lots of stuff, not far from here is an island in a lake, and there's no one there. Now, I'm young, I'm fit. Would you allow me to go there and build a simple hut? It's a nice thing with monks, we don't need anything complicated, something very simple. And that I'll just ask, can an attendant just row over once a week to leave me some vegetables and some basic supplies, and just once a week, that's all. And I can live in solitude and meditate. And sometimes you say, well, why not? So the abbot just let him go over there, and every week the attendant will row over, ask what he needs, and deliver it next week. And that's how he lived for 3 years. And after 3 years, he really thought he cracked it, that he was fully enlightened. So what do you do next? So when the attendant came, he asked the attendant for a piece of parchment, some ink, and a pen, an old quill pen. It's a long time ago. And so the next week, those supplies came, parchment, a pen, and some ink. And then, during the next few days, he meditated. When his mind was really peaceful and clear, he wrote traditional 4-line calligraphy. And the calligraphy translated as, the diligent monk, alone for 3 years, is no longer moved by the 4 worldly winds. And the 4 worldly winds, it's one of the ways of saying you're not moved by anything in this world. So you're fully enlightened. It's a way of claiming full enlightenment. He's not moved by the 4 worldly winds. And then he let the parchment dry. It's beautiful calligraphy, as you can only do after deep meditation. And then he rolled it up, tied it in a ribbon, and waited for the attendant to come and said, please give this to the abbot. And then he relaxed for the next week, just waiting for the attendant to come back. When the attendant came back with the answer after 1 week, he noticed the scroll, it just looked like his scroll. And he opened it up, and his eyes went wide when he saw what the abbot had done to his beautiful calligraphy. On the first line, the diligent monk alone for 3 years. The diligent monk, that was the first line. On that, the abbot had written the 4 letters, F-A-R-T. In red ink. And the next line is diligent monk alone for 3 years. This time was the same 4 letters, F-A-R-T, but this time in capital letters. And the third line is no longer moved. It was F-A-R-T in capital letters underlined. And the last line, by the 4 worldly winds, this huge F-A-R-T, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, underline, underline, underline. And that monk was just so upset. It took 3 years to create this calligraphy. And this stupid old abbot had just spoiled it all. He thought this should have been hung in some museum somewhere as a sign of a monk's diligence, hard work, and enlightenment. And this stupid monk had spoiled it all. So he looked outside, and the attendant was rowing away. He ran out after the attendant, come back now. And the attendant came back, take me to see the abbot. And so the tenant just put him in the boat, took him to see the abbot again, and the monk stormed into the abbot's room. Explain this. You've ruined the calligraphy of an enlightened monk. You can't do this. And the monk, the abbot just quietly paused for a little while. When someone's really angry at you, that's what you do. You pause. And then he unrolled a scroll and read it out. The diligent monk, he wrote, alone for 3 years, is no longer moved by the 4 worldly winds. Yet 4 little farts have blown you clean across the lake. And that poor monk, oh my goodness, he understood. And so he asked the attendant to take him back for another 3 years. see if he could crack it next time. So sometimes that's what we're supposed to do as teachers. If you say you're enlightened, they say, no way. And sometimes be even meaner than that. And then just to see if you respond. If you don't respond, yeah, fine, maybe it's true. Okay, here we go. When I'm aware that the mind is drifting into thinking, the attention is merely brought back to the breath. It is the eye intention, or is it the eye intention or the mind intention? Because I don't go into meditation, the mind does. That's fair enough. It becomes almost like a habit. You don't really choose to do it because you've been trained that way and it just happens naturally. That's sort of okay. But if the mind doesn't come back, it goes off thinking, how do you feel about yourself? You think, stupid, stupid, stupid. So don't be critical to yourself. Don't be judgmental. Instead, be kind to your mind. And if you're very kind to the mind, you find that the attention is merely brought back to the breath, but if you're kind to the mind, the breath is very soft and easy to watch. So one of the ways you can tell whether you're doing it in a beautiful way of really letting go is if it's easy to watch the breath. Now, I wasn't going to say this story, but it seems the right opportunity to say it. That was one of the experiences I had in my 6th year as a monk. I found this beautiful monastery to spend the rains retreat by myself. It was an abandoned monastery in the mountains in the north of Thailand. It's just maybe 100 kilometers or 80 kilometers north of Chiang Mai. And it was perfect. Now, the weather was cool. The villagers, all they wanted to do was to feed me. Nothing else. They weren't interested in asking questions or meditating. They just wanted me to go to their village every morning and get food. And I thought, this is nice. And the village was actually over a little hill, so you couldn't see anybody. And it was high up in the mountains. There was a traffic problem. 1 car a week. And you had to be looking in the right direction to notice it. Sometimes you didn't see it at all. And the best part of it, they had a cave there as well. It's a really deep cave. And actually, that is where I got that simile from of the treading in the dog poo. Because at the front of that cave, the cave was full of bats. And that's how I got to love the smell of bat poo. Because I associate bat poo with all these wonderful meditations I had in that cave at that time. But in front of the cave, there was a papaya tree. And those papayas from that tree were the sweetest and juiciest I've ever had in my life. And I love those papayas. And then, why were they so sweet and juicy? Because the bats would poo on their way out when they went off to do what bats do. And when they came back again, they pooed again. Right on the mango tree. Not mango tree, sorry, papaya tree. So that papaya tree was like bat poo transformed into the most juiciest, sweetest papaya I've ever had in my life. I love that papaya tree because it was come from bat. So when I was eating, I always remembered I'm not really eating papaya, I'm eating bat poo. transformed into the most juicy papaya. But the best thing about that monastery, it was in the middle of a tea plantation. And I was an English monk. Wow, that was like heaven. As much tea as I wanted. And that was quite rare in Thailand at that time. That was in 1979 or something, or 1980, somewhere around that time. But anyway, that I was alone there. There was no teachers. The monastery was abandoned. And I asked the villagers, why aren't there any more monks here? And they said, because they complain it's too quiet. It was amazing. So anyway, there I was, meditated by myself in the cave, nothing to do except eat papaya, and when it was offered. But anyway, that there came a stage in my retreat there. I was there for about 6 to 8 months, when I started to get restless. My mind started wandering off. And I had no one to ask what to do. I was left to myself. So I did what most people do, just try and bring the attention back onto the breath. Then it would wander off again. Try and bring it back. It wandered off again. And as more I tried to do that, the more crazy my mind became. And that's, please excuse me, but this is what happened. I started thinking unmonkish thoughts. Now, I love being a monk. I've always loved being a monk. And I started thinking of old girlfriends. I wonder if she's still available. No, stop it, I jump on. I was still, reasonably young, about 29 at the time, reasonably young. I still had my degree from Cambridge. That should be worth something. And they said, no, stop it. And I go back under, watch the breath, breathing in, breathing out. But she was very beautiful. Stop it. And then it became a battle. It's just so hard to bring my mind back onto the breath. It would just wander off. And the longer I was fighting my mind, the worse it got. And thinking all sorts of unmonkish fantasies and all sorts of stupid stuff. I never wanted to do that, but they kept coming into my mind all the time. And it was such a battle. And I got so frustrated one afternoon and so exhausted. I went to the hall, and there's no one to talk to, but I bowed to the big Buddha statue there and just, it's almost like said desperately, help. And I had an idea. Then the idea was, it must have been like for Mr. Trump, let's do a deal. Not the Buddha. Let's do a deal. And the compromise was this, that I would watch my breath all the day. But if you wanted to think any type of unmonkish thoughts, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. every afternoon was my sexy thought time. Or romance, or fantasies, whatever you want to do, from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. every afternoon, anything goes. Please, don't get offended me sharing this, because this was really, it happened. And I was struggling by myself. But it's wonderful what happened, because the struggle was just as bad as before, probably even worse. But when it got to 3 p.m., I went up to my room, and you lean against the door and put your feet out, you're just so exhausted. And then, okay, mind, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., anything goes time, whatever you want to think, you can. The next hour, I watched every breath without missing one. So easy. And that really shocked me. Why is it when I'm trying to watch my breath, I just can't do it? When I let go, it's so easy. And the answer is, comes into one of my other similes. This is the simile, if you haven't heard it before, it's a beautiful simile. The simile of the donkey and the carrot. You know that if you want to get a donkey to pull a cart, you can, please don't do this, you can beat it, it won't move. It's so stubborn, donkeys. But you don't use a stick to beat the poor donkey. You tie the stick to the donkey's neck. So the front of the stick is 2 foot in front of the donkey's mouth. On the end of the stick, you put a string. On the end of the string, you put a carrot. So, the donkey sees a carrot 2 foot in front of its mouth. It won't move because of pain, but it sees a carrot. It will move because of that. It goes towards the carrot. As the donkey moves towards the carrot, the stick moves, the string moves, the carrot moves. So the carrot's always 2 foot in front of the donkey's mouth. Never reaches it. That's how they get the donkey to pull the cart. Except when donkeys heard about Buddhism. And it's such an easy thing to catch the carrot when you know how. So what does the donkey do? The donkey runs like hell after that carrot. But it's always 2 foot in front. But the donkey just now knows how to stop. So the donkey just stops and stands there. And the carrot swings further and further away, further than it's ever been before, until that carrot swings 4 foot in front of the donkey's mouth, but the donkey doesn't lose confidence. I know when I tell you to let go, people fall asleep, say it's not working. Be patient. The carrot's going further away, okay, but be patient. It goes 4 foot away, and then something weird happens. Once the carrot's 4 foot in front of the donkey's mouth, the carrot starts to swing towards the donkey. The donkey's not doing anything, just standing there. And soon that carrot is 2 foot in front of the donkey's mouth, as it normally is, but now it's coming full speed towards the donkey. Swings up, and swings back, and swings towards the donkey. And the only thing the donkey has to remember is like kindness, compassion. Just at the right moment when the carrot's swinging close to the donkey's mouth, the donkey has to remember, carrot, the door of my mouth is open to you. Otherwise it bounces off the teeth. That's how donkeys catch carrots. Do you understand? So that's why when we really let go, that's why when I stop fighting, does my mind watch the breath so easily? Weird. That was a true story, and just that really shocked me, but it's also, that's where I got a huge amount of insight into just how to watch the breath. Not fighting it. The more I was fighting all those fantasies and stupid, unmonkish thoughts, the more I was feeding them, the stronger they got. And when I just let go, okay, if that's what you want to do, fine. The mind said, no, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to just watch your breath. Anyway, that's my personal story. Not exaggerated at all. Ajahn, in your book, Mindfulness, Bliss and Beyond, you mention instructing the gatekeepers and training in mindfulness. Could you please send some light into what you mean by this? Okay, that you know that sometimes, especially when you get into sort of deeper meditation, sometimes these obstacles come up. And it might be just afraid, fear, because you're going to places you haven't been before. So there's some time, I think at that time I called instructing gatekeepers. Usually these times I call it programming your mindfulness. So what you do is you tell yourself when you're starting, maybe like nimittas can sometimes come up, but you just get afraid of them or you get excited and they only last a second. So you say to yourself, if a nimitta comes up during this meditation, I'll just let it be. Or whatever you say in your own words. If a nimitta comes up, I just leave it alone. Nimitta comes up, I just leave it alone. Repeat it to yourself 3 times, slowly, not fast like I just did. Mindful as you can about what you're saying. You're giving yourself instructions. And then you let it go, you forget it. You think you're forgetting it, but the instructions are inside your mind. It's amazing how well that works. So, nimitta comes up, and normally you just do something which sends it away, disturbs the mind. But this time you find you don't. You actually retrain your mindfulness. It's wonderful how that works. You can only do it at the very beginning of the meditation. Or you may have, what was somebody very recently, they were saying, they always meditate for 1 hour, and after 1 hour, they're getting peaceful, but they always get up anyhow. Almost like a habit, always to go meditate for 1 hour, no longer. So I said, okay, well, when you start meditating, tell yourself when the hour comes up, I'll have another 10 minutes of meditation. So when the hour comes up, I'll have another 10 minutes. When the hour comes up, I'll have another 10 minutes. See what happens. What they do is they're meditating, and the hour comes up, and they're about to come out of meditation, that's their habit, and something says to them, it's just almost subverbal, They don't do it because it's already been done. It's just the program comes up and says, another 10 minutes. And they break those habits without disturbing their mind. So you put the instructions in before. Sometimes in the old days you call it like an antivirus, which you specifically for your problem, you put it in the beginning, and then when it's needed, it comes up. It's one of the reasons why I teach like this. Because when I was meditating, and you get nimittas, and you get really, really close to great states of mind, and something happens and it doesn't work, then you listen to some of the things which Ajahn would say. And then I'd repeat those instructions to myself. And then when those states came up, you just go past them. There won't be a problem anymore. You'd only have to give those instructions at the very beginning of the meditation, not just when your mind is very peaceful, because giving instructions when they're very peaceful just disturb you too much. That's like instructing the gatekeeper. Dear Ajahn, what Panchabala and Panchindriya could you be best descriptive if... Ajahn, well, what Panchabala, the 5 powers and the 5 Indriyas, could you be best descriptive? Descriptive. If not, new late in daytime Dhamma talk. Oh, you want me to talk about the 5 powers and the 5 Indriyas? Yeah, that's, what are the 5 powers and Indriyas, if I get them right again? It's faith, it is energy, it is mindfulness, it is stillness, and it is wisdom. The 5 Indriyas. When they're strong, when they're weak, they're supposed to be Indriyas. When they're strong, they're supposed to be balas, strengths, powers. With confidence or faith, you got a good idea that this path is worth following. You haven't gone to the end of it yet, so you don't really know. But you have your teachers and you check them out. When Ajahn Brahm is just meditating, is he really meditating? Or is he just falling asleep and meditates? What's he up to? Then you can go, when you go over to Bodhinyana Monastery, you can sneak into my cave and see what I've really got in there. Go under the bed, see if there's any Playboy magazines in there. You nice and open so you can check it out. So you've got nothing to hide. So, in other words, that gives you confidence in the teacher and confidence that these teachings actually work. And that's really important, that degree of faith. And then the energy. And I talked even this morning about energy. Energy coming from, this afternoon, energy coming from willpower is not really sustainable. But from wisdom and kindness, you get huge amounts of energy from kindness and service. You ever notice when you're working at your job, they pay you for that, but it's nowhere near as fun and as much energetic as when you're washing the dishes or cleaning up after the meal at your service on this meditation retreat. Or the people who bring the food to feed you. It's more delicious when they do it as an act of charity than if they do that, just for their husbands or their wives or whatever. That's what all these Thai ladies, when I first came over here, they would just put so much energy and effort into cooking for the monks, and their husbands would complain. So why did you cook like this for me? And the wife would say, yes, I would cook like this for you if you shave off your hair and become a monk. Smart Alec answer, but it worked. Because when you're doing it out of love and kindness and joy and not for money, you get more energy out of that. So when you're meditating out of service, as your gift to the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, if you're a devout Buddhist, you're doing this out of letting go. It's not just for you, it's for others as well. You get much more energy. It gets more powerful. So that's another faith and the energy, and the mindfulness and awareness, and the stillness of meditation. Oh, I love that stillness. And the wisdom which comes from it. The two always go together, the stillness and the insight. Those the 5 Indriyas in brief, but I'll be obviously saying something about them sometime. Dear Ajahn, when I come to retreats, I have found the first few days I get falling asleep and dreaming a lot. Yeah. Is this normal? Yeah. Can you please comment on this? Normal. That's why I encourage you to do that. When people say, I feel so guilty, I just slept so much today. No, please, don't feel guilty. Don't have this personal judgment to affect your body's need to take a rest. Out there in that world, it's so busy. You know it's so busy, and people struggle just to survive. You got your work, your family, and goodness knows what else. And we have what psychologists, doctors call sleep deficit. And because of sleep deficit, whenever you come to a quiet place like this, where you feel safe, you're safe, you can fall asleep if you want to. You won't be criticized, you won't get into trouble. Then people take the opportunity to do that. And sometimes you can't stop it. The brain says, at last. There's this story I was talking with Ajahn Brahmavamso about this a couple of days ago. This lady who came to the Friday night talk at Nolamara some years ago. And when we started the meditation, she meditated sitting cross-legged for about 2 or 3 minutes. Then everyone had their eyes closed, so she lay on the ground. She had her feet pointing towards the Buddha, and then she fell asleep and started snoring. Really loud snores. And other people woke her up. And I just thought, well, why did you do that? Because, maybe it's my fault, I should have told people to leave her alone, because she told me beforehand that she was a victim of quite horrendous domestic abuse. And these were the days before women knew they could get help. And she said to me that she came into that hall, she felt safe for the first time in weeks. And this poor lady, she had hardly slept at all for weeks. She came into a safe place of kindness. And it was just almost automatically. She never meant to offend anybody. She just lay down and she felt this wonderful deep sleep. And somebody woke her up. Don't do that, please. Again, let her sleep. If you know why she did that, that I'm a guy and I've never been married, and that domestic abuse which sometimes you read about is just horrendous. Imagine you can't go to sleep because you get bashed. You're so afraid. No place to hide or go. She came to the temple and it was a place of safety. And automatically her brain did what it really needed to do, just to turn off and take a bit of a break. So that's one of the reasons why that, if you feel tired, it's not domestic abuse, it's just the cultural abuse of our modern age. So much work, so many things to do, so many things to think about, most of you. And so you're tired the first few days, so take the opportunity to rest. And then after a while, 2 or 3 days usually, you start getting energy back. And then you do wonderfully well afterwards. This morning you mentioned that the body is in the mind. Huh? Well, the other way around. I think the mind is in the body or something. Anyway, when the body gets withered and dies away, mind does not die but carries on to the next form of birth, yeah? I guess characteristic of one life gets copied into the next one this way. Appreciate some expansion of this, please. And some of it gets copied, but not all of it. There's always some differences, some slight changes. But some of your characteristics do get replicated. And that's how people can recognize you. Just like this story, this Buddhist over in Sydney. He had an auntie. The auntie was a businesswoman, very successful, became quite wealthy. But the 2 things she hated in life, most of all, first was paying tax. She hated paying tax, didn't see the point in it. She's a successful Sydney businesswoman, Caucasian. And the other thing she hated was religion, all religion. And so when she died, it was her nephew, was a very devout Buddhist. And so he hardly inherited anything. And the reason was because, she thought that he'd give it to the temple. And no, she didn't like religion, any type of religion. So he just got a tiny bit of the inheritance, much less than the other parts of the family. But then a few months after his auntie died, his wife had a kid. And the kid came with all the memories of the previous life, just which came up every now and again. They were passing, she said one thing, they were passing a billboard, a big advertisement about GST or something, and tax. And this little 2 or 3-year-old, Daddy, what does tax mean? I was actually interested to know what it meant. And so if you get he said something like, if you get some pocket money, anything you earn, you have to give a part of it to the government. And the little 2 or 3-year-old said, Daddy, when I get any money, I'm not giving anything to any government. She still had that same attitude of hating paying tax in this next life. So sometimes these little kids have some of the characteristics from the previous life, and it's true, it's not in the body, it's in the mind. And this mind is not a single thing, it sort of develops and changes, it adapts. It's not quite the same as it was before, but it changes a little bit, which means you can grow. So it's true, the body, you're not in the same body. What was that other story where one of the Thai couples here, woman was pregnant, gave birth to became pregnant with her first child, and was really excited. They had all the stuff for getting the baby. 5 days before, they had an ultrasound before the birth. In those 5 days, the baby had turned in the womb and strangled itself on the umbilical cord. So it was a stillbirth. And of course, it was actually quite amazing. You say they'd be devastated. They were disappointed, but they weren't devastated. They were a very sort of wise Buddhist family. But nevertheless, I did the funeral ceremony for them over in the Bowano days in Wanneroo Road. And at the ceremony, they dressed the boy up, who was a boy, in clothes. It was perfectly formed. It was just an unfortunate accident that it cut off its blood supply before it was born. And they lifted up the coffin, just enough to have a family photograph. And I was really sort of moved. They put me in the family photograph as well. And they called the boy Charlie. But what I never saw at the time, I should have been paying attention, when no one was looking, they took a biro pen and marked a line on the heel there. Because they had the idea that it was an unfortunate accident and that baby will probably try and come back again. And they would know if it's the same kid if there was a birthmark there. And of course, that's what happened. The kid came back again. And it's also, I don't know why, it's like, if they have an accident like that, it's like the kid gets an improvement or something, gets like, it shouldn't have happened, so it gets upgraded. And the kid was upgraded. In its next life, it was born as a girl. And all of them say, yeah, Ajahn Brahm, yeah. And it's got the birthmark on its foot, exactly where they put it. That's really amazing. But anyway, and when it was the first few years of life, it would run around our city centre Dhamma, like in the community hall. We didn't have the main hall. It would run around and play with the boys. It was a tomboy, you'd say, because it was a boy before. So yeah, sometimes you can see just how life to life, and some of the characteristics stay. Ajahn Brahm, how to let go. Any step starts proceeding to let go. Put it down. Don't hold things. This is, oh good, he's a long way away. This is Ajahn Chah's story. This is how he told me to let go. I was on arms round with him one day, and he stopped and picked up a stick in the middle of the path. And he said, "Is this stick heavy?" Before I could answer, he threw it away. It's only heavy when you hold it. And then he went walking on again. And those one-liners, they meant so much. Life is only heavy when you hold it. What you're worried about, what you're going to do, worried about your health, worried about your past, worried about meditation, worried about when is Ajahn Brahm going to stop talking. It's only heavy when you hold it. You put it down, it's not a problem anymore. That's how we learn how to let things go. Well, as the Dalai Lama used to say, if you can actually do something about the future, apparently getting the US elections soon, are you worried about the US elections? If you can do something about it, it's worth worrying about it. If you can't do anything about it, what's the point of worrying? That's paraphrasing what the Dalai Lama would say. You can't do anything, you haven't got a vote. So, don't worry. What is the point of worrying if you can't do anything about it? If you can do something about it, fine. So that's how we let go. So easy. Letting go is also, the interesting part of letting go is being more kind. And the reason I say this, and the reason it becomes quite clear that kindness and letting go together, is the way that I describe loving kindness, letting go, is that story from my father. Son, the door of my heart is open to you no matter what you ever do. The unconditional loving kindness. You're my son, that's enough. You don't have to try and live up to any standards or try and please me. You're my son, so the door of my heart is always open to you no matter what. Because that meant so much to me. And every time I say it, you can feel the power of it. So that is unconditional loving kindness, which is letting things be, letting it go, not controlling. You didn't need to say, yes, you can come into my house and I'll look after you as long as you do this, this, this and that. It was just a total letting go and just loving me anyway. Now that's what we let go. Can you love your mind like that? Mind? The door of my heart's open to you no matter what you ever do, even if you think unmonkish thoughts, even if you fall asleep, even if you sort of go backwards in meditation, don't even get anywhere near nimittas and can't even watch the breath, can't even be in the present moment. But I still love you, mind. The door of my heart's open to you, mind, no matter who you are, no matter what you are. You don't have to prove yourself. You're making peace. You're letting your mind be. And then, of course, it gets really, really peaceful. That's how it works. How can a parent's meditation practice help deal with a teenager who continually pushes the boundaries, fears no consequences, and has a know-it-all attitude? That's what teenagers are. Before you have a kid, you should actually read the contract. Know what you're getting into. It's true. This is 13th century, it could be 14th century. That's a long time ago, okay? And not in Australia. This was in Iran. This was Nasruddin, the Mullah Nasruddin, who's a Sufi, and really he's a very funny man, funny stories. So anyway, he had a business transporting salt from one place to another, donkeys. And his teenage son would help him. And whenever they were crossing a narrow bridge, if that donkey was leaning to the left because of the weight of the salt, the father would tell his teenage son, push it further to the left. It was leaning to the left, okay. Push it further to the left. And the teenager would always do the opposite, which the father said, would push it to the right. If it was leaning to the right, push it more to the right, and then push it to the left. And that's how they balanced the donkey over the bridges and just managed to do his business. Only one day what happened, the donkey was leaning to the left, going over a bridge, and the father, as you said, push it more to the left, please. And instead of going against the father's wishes, that day the son pushed it further to the left and the donkey fell in. And the father said, what did you do that for? Dad, don't you remember? It's my birthday today. Today I'm 20. I'm not a teenager anymore. And that is a centuries-old story from a different culture in a different land. So teenagers haven't changed. That's what they're like, that's what they do. So how can a person's meditation practice help deal with a teenager who continually pushes the boundaries? That's what they're doing. That's what they have to do. So let it be. So yeah, it's your boundary pushing. You take responsibility. Dear Ajahn, I have read about the meditation of contemplation on death. Can you briefly explain this type of meditation? Okay, very briefly. I haven't really said too much about doing the walking meditation. Hopefully some of you are doing some walking meditation. If you want to know what to do with walking meditation, you know how to walk? Well, that's how you do walking meditation. Keep it simple. So you go in these rooms over here, you know, one over here, one over there, one over there. They're the best. And you've got these red carpets. You know, I built this place and I ordered those carpets. They're one of my yoga mats. And I said I want the colour red. Why? Because I want to encourage the walking meditation. You're given the red carpet, okay, doing the walking meditation. And they're nice and soft. And you've put them in the hall here. And between there is hard concrete. And it's going to be that hard concrete. I'm not going to paint it because I'm trying to discourage you from walking on the concrete. Walk on the nice red carpet. And you walk from one end to the other. The lovely thing about walking meditation, you don't get anywhere. People always want to attain something, but you end up where you started. That is a big insight to start with. And then you just feel the sensations of your feet as they're lifting, they're moving forward, as they're going down. That's what walking meditation is. But as you were walking, you can actually combine that with something like death meditation. And this actually comes from a Thai tradition, where when you walk, there's a few Thais here, as you move your right foot first, you say die. Your left foot, nair. Die, nair, die, nair, die, nair. If any Indonesians here or people who speak Bahasa, that's also good. It's mati pasti. Mati pasti. If you're English speaking, as your right foot moves, you say to yourself, I will die. The left foot, that's for sure. I will die, that's for sure. I will die, that's for sure. Now you can't argue with that, can you? Many other things I say people argue with, but that one, you know, you're wasting your time trying to argue with it. I will die, that's for sure. I will die, that's for sure. If you do that as you're doing walking meditation, the amazing thing happens. Usually you think, oh, this is just a joke. I will die, that's for sure, yeah. But then as you continue to repeat that to yourself, I will die, that's for sure, you realize it's not a joke, that is absolutely true. You never know when you're going to die. I will die, that's for sure. Then you get fear. You carry on walking. I will die, that's for sure. And after you get fear, and you go past that, you walk through it, then you realize all these things I'm worried about in life. What a stupid thing worrying about these things. I will die, that's for sure. And you can let go very easy, very quickly. I will die, that's for sure. Why am I worried about my kids, my teenagers? Why are you worried about possessions, elections? All this other stuff which people worry about. I will die, that's for sure. It helps you let go and you get so free. Feel so peaceful. I will die, that's for sure. And you have wonderful meditations. So peaceful, not worried about a thing. You're going to die. I will die, that's for sure. Woohoo! That's one of the best ways of doing the death meditations. Thank you, Ajahn Brahm. Would you please advise how to meditate and behave at the moment of death? I don't know if people... This is a totally different writing. Is it? Sometimes I've noticed this, the synchronicity or whatever. you get the same questions, one after the other, in the box, and different people write them. Ooh, ooh. Would you please advise how to meditate and behave around the moment of death for a person and family? My friend, also Buddhist, different tradition, was told she could not cry at a funeral in case the deceased became entangled. You become entangled if you don't do things naturally. But if you are going to feel like sad and crying at the death, who are you crying for? A lot of the time we cry for ourselves. And instead of the poor person who's really suffering, the one who's dying, they're the one who's hurting the most. So give them a break. Don't cry. Yeah, okay. Got some more stories. There was this Tibetan Buddhist nun I was counselling. She was, I don't know what diseases she had, it was cancer, at least was one of them, but she was dying. And she was in the old Shenton Park hospice. They had one there. They closed it down. I don't know why the government closed that place down. It was a beautiful hospice. But anyway, she called me and said, look, I think I'm going to die in a couple of days. Can you come? And whenever anybody says that, they think they're going to die, and they give a time, they're usually pretty accurate. For her, it was the case. A couple of days, and she was gone. And so, I stopped what I was doing, whatever building I was doing, got one of the Anagarikas to actually get the car out and drive to Shenton Park. An hour and a quarter, maybe an hour and a half, I think, in those days. And when I got there, you can't just go into a patient's room in a hospice. You had to check in with the nurse on duty. The nurse on duty was this senior matron. And I don't know why she's on duty that day, but when I checked in, she said, I'm sorry, that patient doesn't want any visitors at all. I said, it can't be. She just called me an hour and a quarter ago, asked me to come. Look, we have to respect our patient's wishes. But I've come all the way from Serpentine, an hour and a quarter. And she got really mad at me and angry. Look, we can't just barge into a room. People are very sick. We have to respect them. And she dragged me to the room. And on the outside of the room was this notice, which the Tibetan nun had written herself. Absolutely no visitors. That's what, don't give it away. And that's what, and the nurse with such arrogance, she pointed out and said, see? And see? And I looked at it, and of course it was on the very bottom, except for Ajahn Brahm. And I shouldn't have done this, but I'm glad I did. I looked at the nurse and said, see? And the poor nurse was embarrassed. So I shouldn't have done that, but anyway. And I let myself in. And I asked the patient, this nun, I said, why did you write that on there? And she said, because all my friends, they come and see me. And they get so emotional seeing just how close to death I am, how thin I am, just how wasted is my body. And they get emotionally upset seeing me. She said, it's hard enough to deal with your own impending death and get to understand how to deal with the very unpleasant physical sensations as well. And now I have to deal with these people's rubbish as well. And he said, it's a bit too much for me. But Ajahn Brahm, when you come in, you don't get emotionally upset. You just tell me jokes. So, please tell me another joke. So I told a few jokes because when people are dying, the doctor is asking them how they feel and what they need. What she wanted was to have some nice company, to have someone talk to her as if we're just going for a cup of coffee in the shop. That's what she was missing in the last days before she died. Of course, there was some serious stuff said as well, but mostly it was just nice companionship for an hour or two. So please, if you go visit someone who's very sick and dying, let the doctors and nurses, the professional, talk about the sickness. You talk about the person. They're much more than the sickness. So just put the sickness aside and see the person. there as well, and be kind to them. Respond appropriately. Don't just see the sickness, see the person. So that's when you're crying, you're just seeing, actually not even seeing the sickness, you're seeing you're losing what you want to keep. So, not cry at a funeral. Sometimes all those rules which are just made down, just black and white, it really depends on what's happening there and who's dying and what's occurring. So you can't say that the rule has to be applied all the time. Sometimes you go to someone who's dying and you realize that crying is not the right thing. But sometimes, they say, if you want to cry, I love you very much. This is a dying person saying this. If you want to cry, that's fine by me, because I understand where you're coming from. It's not going to keep me hanging around. So sometimes those rules are interesting things to contemplate. Who are you crying for? And are you really being kind? And who needs the kindness most at that time? So sometimes you cry, sometimes you don't cry. But the rules are not rigid. How many methods of meditation are there? Are these meditation methods the same for all Buddhist traditions? I've been teaching meditation for a long time now. So I usually start with just gentle relaxation. And if they can't do relaxation, then I teach them letting go. If they can't do letting go, I teach them breath meditation. If they have difficulty with breath meditation, I teach them anapanasati. If they can't do anapanasati, I teach them insight meditation. If they can't do insight meditation, I teach them vipassana. If they can't do vipassana, I teach them loving kindness meditation. If they can't do loving kindness, I teach them metta meditation. If they can't do metta meditation, I teach them meditation on death. If they can't do death meditation, I teach them the maranasati. If they can't do maranasati, then I teach them breath meditation. By that time, they don't realize that's where they started. Yeah, exactly. Because all these meditations are basically the same. Learning how to put things down, let them go, let them become still. And all the insights and understandings, they will come by themselves in the right order. You just have to get out of the way and relax, let go, make peace. That's how to meditate. So it's all the same. Thank you, Ajahn Brahm, for continuing and patiently pointing us in the right direction. My question is, what role does the heart play in self-realization? Huge amount. I often experience tremendous joy and expansion from this area which goes beyond my body. It happens during meditation, especially when added kindness. It dissolves my thoughts and my aches and pains. Much love. Yeah, you can't go wrong with kindness. But try and just disembody it. So it's not coming from your heart. When the body vanishes, your body disappears in deep meditation, you've still got the kindness. It's not centered in your heart. It's just everywhere. And that's when the loving kindness gets incredibly strong. You may sort of start if it's coming from your heart, because that's how you've been conditioned. Then have it going way out until you can't remember your heart. It's just the heart is gone, the source of loving kindness is just everywhere. And for those who are doing loving kindness meditation, when it gets very strong, loving kindness, again, not to one person or many persons, just for everywhere. Again, try and make it simple by making it not personal, not bodies, not human beings, everything. And it's wonderful to experiment, and I've done this, and it actually works. You can have loving kindness to even machines. And I can't resist this story. This is true. I checked this out so many times. There was one of the men, he's staying for 1 year at Bodhinyana Monastery, and then he went to do some more studies in Germany. I think it was in Frankfurt University he went to. And his first day on campus, he passed an ATM machine. And the ATM machine made a noise. He called it a gurgling sound. And he imagined the ATM was welcoming him onto campus. So from that day on, he'd learned lots of loving kindness here in Bodhinyana Monastery. And he gave loving kindness to the machine every day. May you never run out of money. May people not shout and swear at you. because they haven't got any money to take out. These are students. May never run out of electricity, and may no one ever try and rob you. Whatever, he managed to make up loving kindness to the ATM machine. He did that continuously. And then he was having this is a crazy story. And are you sure this happened? He said, yeah, Ajahn Brahm, I wouldn't lie to you. And every time I saw him, I used to go to Frankfurt regularly, and I'd always come to my talks, and are you sure that happened? He said, yes, it did. And he was having his lunch, just a sandwich on a bench, just within earshot of the ATM. And he heard the gurgling sound once more. And he turned around to look at the ATM machine, the only second time he'd heard this gurgling sound. And he saw a 20 € banknote come out of the machine. And no one was near the machine. No one had been close to the machine for, as long as he'd been sitting there having his lunch. So he went to the machine, he took the €20 note out, waved it in the air. Does this belong to anybody? No one claimed it. So he put it in his pocket. That's the result of loving kindness. Even ATMs will repay your loving kindness. With 20 euros. So for a student, that was a lot of money. That was quite a long time ago, 20 years or something ago. So, if you need a bit of cash, get your loving kindness going strong, and nice ATM machine. And that would happen, for sure. Okay, better do the last 3 questions. I've had very lucid nightmares. One last night and once at a previous retreat. Is this usual amongst retreatants or it just me? Any significance? Appreciate your thoughts. No, it's quite common amongst people because you're much more peaceful. Your mind is not so worn out, by just the stuff of the day. So yeah, sometimes people do, but don't call them nightmares. It's just a very good script for a new movie. So write it down and send it to Hollywood. But it's nightmares, the way we react to it. So one thing you can do to program your mindfulness when you go to bed tonight, say to yourself, if I have like a nightmare, I'll turn it into something beautiful. So it'll be not sort of a nightmare, it'll be a beautiful dream. And just your reaction to what you're experiencing, you can turn it into something very beautiful and wonderful. Let's program your mindfulness. I have read about a man who was in a coma after an accident, who visited heaven, met his deceased relations and friends. When he woke up, he recovered. He was written a book, What is this place, the day of the realm? Yes, several people have those sorts of experience, either sickness or accidents. And sometimes they say, and sometimes these are very devout, say Catholics, and they swear that they met the Virgin Mary. And they said, no, it was really the Virgin Mary. Then some of the Protestants, and they swear they met Jesus. Some of them are Hindus, and they swear they met Lord Krishna. Some are Buddhists, and they swear they met Kuan Yin. Some are atheists, and they swear they met Uncle George. And when you read about these stories, and these are authentic people, they're not lying, they're not crazy. It's a marvelous experience they had. You sort of wonder, just who did they really meet? Is it the case that up in heaven, they have a look, see who's coming? They say, oh, this is a Catholic, it's yours, Virgin Mary. This is an atheist. Uncle George, come on. Because what people are doing is the same experience when you're dying. And you're going to what we call this nimitta, and you enter that nimitta, you go inside of it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful bliss and peace. Sometimes call that ultimate love. And while you're in there, you can't do anything. As you come out, you can. That was amazing. What was that? If you're a Hindu, you would experience that as this powerful Lord Krishna or something. Your perception would experiencing it in that way. You add to the experience, which everybody feels the same, what you think it must be. This is actually how these mental experiences we have, the part which is real, is the same for everybody. And our perception adds and draws in what we think it must be. The same, weird as you may imagine this, when Thai people see heavenly beings, they see it, when they really experience this, they see it just as you see in the temple paintings. If it is Westerners, you see it with the wings. And sometimes, are these people crazy? So, no, because this is how you're learning, your conditioning will colour in the details of what you're experiencing in the mind. So, yes, this man was in a coma after an accident, visited heaven, met his deceased relations and friends. When he woke up, recovered. He's written a book about what this place is, the Deva realm. For that place, it would be like nimittas. This realm where the body is vanished, is out of reach, and you're left in this realm of your mind. There's a lot of truth in that. Those people have actually died. There's also a lot of what you add on to the experience. Once you actually start getting into this nimittas, when the body disappears during meditation, see how beautiful it is, how loving it is, but also just how you interpret it in your way. People see the same. We have far more scope to add perceptions which we expect to be there. Last question. P.S. Apologise, not a meditation question. Well, okay. My partner divorced about 2 years ago, not a choice by me. Lately have received very negative, X's? I don't know what that is. Negative something. I send metta every day in my meditation. It still continues. Should I ignore it with deepest respect? No, I'd always send metta to your ex-partner. Partner divorced about 2 years ago, not a choice by me. So send metta every day in my meditation. You can never go wrong with metta, sending it to your partner. And whatever you receive back, send metta back instead. And after a while, you can't sort of resist loving kindness, forgiveness. But make sure it's real metta you're sending them. Not sort of metta, may you be happy and well in your next life. That's be real metta. And then it's fine. Okie dokie. Got a nice bit of praise over here, which is very nice. You gave me my first precepts a long time ago and taught me how to meditate. Just need to say that learning meditation has been the greatest for me in this birth. Thanking you and the Sangha for this. I find my meditation so easy and powerful in daily life. It gives me the joy to embrace metta every day. Thank you. May we all attain the highest blessing. So sometimes not questions, but a nice bit of praise, which is beautiful. Excellent. Okay, so that's enough for this evening. It's 9:21. But you ask the questions. I just extended with the stories. Sorry about that. Anyway, have a wonderful night's sleep. No nightmares tonight. Just tell yourself I'll have just beautiful dreams, wonderful dreams. What do I do now? Oh yes, sadhu, sadhu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Hee hee hee. Okay, have a wonderful night. And see you in the morning. One way, the other way of not having nightmares is not going to bed. Stay here all night. Meditate. Now, don't be silly like that.